Welcome to Midnight Affairs Tales, where secrets don't sleep. Tell us where you're watching from, then buckle up. And most important, never forget to subscribe to our channel. Starts now. The rain didn't stop the day they buried Claire. It soaked the soil, the casket, and the faces of the few mourners brave enough to stand through the service without umbrellas. Nathan could barely feel the cold. Grief dulled everything. His wife, the woman he had built a life with over 7 years, was gone. Just like that. A freak accident, they said. A slippery road, a shattered windshield, a late-night phone call that had ripped his world in half. He didn't cry. Not during the eulogy. Not when they lowered her into the earth. Not when the final shovel of mud thudded against the wooden lid. He just stood there, eyes hollow, lips pressed tight, fingers gripping the folded photograph of her that he refused to let go of. Claire, smiling by the lake. Claire, with that dimple only he could see when she laughed too hard. Gone. Their baby was due in just 3 weeks. She was glowing, nesting, dreaming of names. And now she was ash in memory. What remained was the house. Too quiet, too dark. Every room a shrine to the life they were supposed to live. The crib in the nursery stood half-built. The little plush elephant she'd bought as the first toy sat untouched in its box. Claire's scent lingered in the hallway, like she had just walked past. 3 days after the funeral, Nathan came home to find the front door open. His heart jumped, not out of fear, at least not then, but because, for one brief, insane moment, he thought it might be her. That maybe all this was some twisted nightmare he was finally waking up from. But it wasn't Claire. It was his brother, James. Nathan's voice cracked from disuse and confusion. "What the hell are you doing here?" James turned around from the living room where he'd been quietly sitting, a steaming mug in hand, like he belonged there. "I heard about Claire," he said simply. "I came as soon as I could." James had always been distant, the shadow sibling. The one who dropped out of college, disappeared into some overseas job Nathan never quite understood, and surfaced only occasionally. A call at Christmas, a random postcard from Croatia. They hadn't seen each other in almost 2 years. Nathan stared at him, still in his funeral suit, his eyes raw. "You missed the funeral." "I couldn't get here sooner," James said. "Flights. Customs. You know how it is." Nathan didn't know. He didn't care. But something in his brother's tone was soothing, familiar. He sounded like the voice in Nathan's head that kept him from falling apart. That told him he couldn't just shut down. That the baby, Claire's baby, still needed him. James stayed that night. He insisted. Said he didn't want Nathan to be alone. He made soup, cleaned the kitchen, started organizing the baby clothes Nathan had left in a pile after the accident. He was helpful. Too helpful. By the end of the week, James had practically moved in. And Nathan, numb as he was, didn't stop him. Maybe it was good. Maybe he needed someone around. Someone to hold the pieces together while he rebuilt himself. He wasn't eating. He barely slept. At night, the house creaked with emptiness, and only James's steady presence kept it from swallowing him whole. Then, just 8 days after the funeral, the baby came. Too early. Too small. But alive. The nurses were amazed. The doctors said it was rare but not impossible, a kind of miracle. Claire had been declared brain dead after the accident, but the emergency C-section had been performed just in time. The baby had survived. Nathan hadn't known. They hadn't told him at first. A hospital error, a misfiled report, some kind of bureaucratic mix-up. But now, there she was. His daughter, pink and perfect and breathing. When he held her for the first time, something inside cracked open. The tears that hadn't come at the funeral flowed now. Her tiny fingers curled around his thumb like she'd known him all along. He named her Alara, the name Claire had whispered one night, half asleep, tracing patterns on his chest. James was overjoyed. He hovered at the nursery, carried Alara around like she was his own, whispered lullabies Nathan didn't recognize. And for a while, Nathan let it be. Grief had made everything hazy. It was comforting, even if it was strange. But 2 weeks later, something changed. It started with a look. One morning, as Nathan sat with Alara in the nursery, feeding her, she turned and stared at him. Not like a baby stares, not wide-eyed and empty, but watched him. Her eyes were dark, familiar. Then, she smiled. A crooked smile. The same crooked smile James had. Nathan's heart froze. It wasn't just the smile. It was the eyes. They weren't Claire's. And they weren't his. They were James's. Deep set, cold, almost amused. A chill crept up his spine. He brushed it off. Babies were weird. Faces changed, right? But then came the moment he couldn't ignore, the moment that made his stomach turn and his mind spiral. That night, James was holding Alara again. He had her wrapped up tight, walking slowly back and forth across the living room, whispering to her in low, rhythmic tones. Nathan stood in the hallway, watching. He couldn't hear the words, not clearly, but one sentence floated out, clear and sharp. "You were always meant to be mine." Nathan stepped forward. "What did you just say?" James turned, startled, but not ashamed. Not even surprised. "I was just comforting her," he said smoothly. She was fussy, but she hadn't been crying. She'd been still, listening. Nathan didn't say anything more. But that night, he didn't sleep. He sat awake, staring at the baby monitor's soft glow, waiting for the moment her face would turn toward the camera again. When it did, around 3:14 a.m., she smiled. The same crooked smile. James's smile. The next morning was thick with a kind of quiet that felt intentional, like the house itself was holding its breath. Nathan moved through it like a ghost, retracing familiar paths now cluttered with unfamiliar sensations. He didn't trust what he saw anymore, or what he felt. The baby's room, once a sanctuary of hope, now pulsed with something else. Something heavier. James was already awake, standing in the kitchen with his sleeves rolled up, flipping eggs like he belonged here, like this was his home. "You didn't sleep again," James said, glancing over his shoulder. Nathan didn't answer. He watched him instead. The way James moved, efficient, practiced, domestic, had always been foreign to Nathan. James had never settled, never married, never seemed to care about permanence. But here he was, playing house in Nathan's grief-stricken world. "I'll take Alara today," James offered, as if sensing the weight behind Nathan's silence. "You look like you could use a break." Nathan nodded slowly, even though the idea felt wrong. Every instinct inside him screamed not to hand her over. But he was tired. Not just sleep-deprived, soul-tired. The kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones and tells you that maybe it's okay to let someone else carry things for a while. He watched James cradle her, bouncing her gently, while humming the same low tune Nathan had heard the night before. The melody wrapped around the room like smoke, and Alara, little Alara, calmed instantly. Her eyes fluttered open, stared past Nathan, straight into James. It felt like they shared something he couldn't understand, something he wasn't part of. Nathan left the house that afternoon for the first time in weeks. Just walked. Through the park, past the coffee shop Claire used to love, through the street where they'd once kissed under fireworks on New Year's Eve. The world hadn't changed, not really, but Nathan had. And now, everything looked wrong. He returned after dark. The lights were low. The house was too quiet. "James?" he called, setting his keys down. No answer. He checked the nursery first, empty. Then the master bedroom, also empty. Then he heard it. A soft creak from the far end of the hallway. The door to the guest room, James's room, was closed. But light bled out from under the crack. Nathan approached slowly, his hand hovering just above the doorknob. Something in his gut twisted. He knocked. "James." No answer. He opened the door and froze. James sat in the corner of the room, Alara in his lap, a small wooden box open beside him on the floor. He didn't look up. He was whispering to her again. That same low voice, rhythmic and intimate. The baby's eyes were wide, locked onto his face. But it wasn't the whispering that made Nathan step back. It was what was inside the box. Photos. Dozens of them. Claire. All taken without her knowing. Some from a distance. Some through windows. Some while she was pregnant. And one, the most recent, showed her leaving the house the night of the accident. Nathan's heart thundered. "What the hell is this?" he asked, his voice cracking. James looked up slowly. No guilt. No surprise. Just that same quiet intensity. "I loved her," he said simply. Nathan's blood turned to ice. "What did you say?" "I loved her," James repeated, standing slowly with Alara in his arms. "Long before you ever did." Nathan stepped forward. "Give me the baby." James took a step back. "She's better off with me." Nathan's voice dropped to a whisper. "You need to leave." James tilted his head, looking at Nathan like he was the crazy one. "You don't understand. She came to me. After the accident. She told me the truth." Nathan stared at him, his breath catching. "What truth?" James's eyes darkened. "She wasn't yours, Nathan. She was never yours. You think she died loving you?" He wasn't going crazy. The next morning, he went to the local library. Not Google, not Reddit. The library. Somewhere grounded. Real. Somewhere filled with records, archives, things that couldn't lie. He found what he was looking for in a dusty stack of microfilms. A death certificate. James Allen Hale. Born 1986. Died 2011. Confirmed by the embassy. Body never recovered. Presumed dead. Nathan stared at the paper for a long time, his heart pounding. Then, finally, he whispered to himself, "Who the hell did I let into my house?" When he returned home, he found the crib empty, and the window open, curtains fluttering like something had just left. The crib was empty. Nathan's breath caught in his throat, and for a moment, the world tilted. He rushed forward, hands trembling, and reached into the empty crib as if she might somehow still be there, hiding beneath the soft blankets or tucked behind the stuffed elephant Claire had chosen months before. But Alara was gone. "Alara," he shouted, voice ragged and panicked. He turned, eyes scanning the nursery. "Alara." His heart thudded in his ears as he stumbled down the hallway. The entire house was silent. Not even the usual creaks of settling wood or hum of appliances. Just silence. Heavy. Watching. The open window in the nursery looked out over the backyard, the lawn wet with dew, the swing swaying slightly in the early morning breeze. Had someone come in? Or had something left? He ran through the house, calling her name over and over, searching every room, every closet. Panic rose like a wave, threatening to drown him. He flung open the guest room door, still abandoned. James's presence scrubbed from every surface. Then a sound, a faint thump, from behind the basement door. Nathan froze. That door had been locked for weeks. Ever since the funeral. Ever since he moved all of Claire's maternity things down there. It was always closed, the lock always latched. But now it stood slightly ajar. He crept toward it. Slowly, carefully. "Please," he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. "Please let her be okay." The stairs groaned under his weight as he descended. The air was colder here, thick with dust and the scent of mildew. His foot hit something soft. A doll. Alara's. One she'd never played with. "James," he said into the dark. "If you're down here, I swear to God." Another sound. Whispered. Just barely audible. Nathan held his breath. And then he heard it. A lullaby. Faint, muffled, coming from the far corner of the basement. The same one James used to hum. He followed it, heart racing, until he reached an old storage cabinet, something he'd barely touched in years. The sound was coming from inside it. He flung the doors open, and Alara was there, asleep, swaddled in one of Claire's old scarves, resting peacefully atop a blanket Nathan didn't recognize. And there, beside her, was the box of photographs, the same one James had used. But now, it was filled with new images. Photos of Nathan, sleeping, crying, sitting in the nursery, dozens of them. And not just photos. Notes, letters, written in handwriting Nathan didn't recognize. Pages of it, all addressed to Claire, all filled with a kind of desperate, twisted love. "I waited. I watched. You said he'd never understand. You said the baby was mine." Nathan stepped back, his knees weak. This was a shrine, not to Claire, but to obsession, to possession. He grabbed Alara, clutching her tightly to his chest. She stirred but didn't cry. Her eyes opened, and for a moment, they flashed with something unreadable, something far older than a newborn should be capable of. "I've got you," Nathan whispered. "I've got you now." He's gone. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. James, or whatever had worn James's face, had left something behind. That night, Nathan locked every window, nailed them shut. He placed Alara's crib in his bedroom and left every light on. He tried not to sleep, afraid that if he closed his eyes, he'd wake up to find her gone again. And then, just past 2 a.m., the whisper started. Not from the monitor, from the walls. The same lullaby. Soft, mocking. Then a voice, James's voice, low and steady. "You can't keep her, Nathan. She's not yours. She never was." Nathan turned on the radio. Loud. Tried to drown it out. But underneath the static and music, he still heard it. "She remembers. She remembers. She remembers." The next morning, Nathan called Jennifer again. "I need to know everything Claire ever told you," he said. "She didn't talk about him," Jennifer said. "Not much. But there was something once, right after she got pregnant. She called me. She was shaken. Said she saw James. That he had come to her in a dream. Said he told her the baby was his. She was crying. Confused. And you didn't think that was important? Nathan snapped. I thought she was overwhelmed. Hormonal. You don't think someone's dead brother is really stalking her in her dreams, Nathan? She never said anything else? No. But there was something odd in her journal. I read part of it while packing her things. She wrote, he said he could come back if I loved him enough. Nathan's stomach turned. This wasn't just grief. This wasn't trauma. Something had come back. And it wasn't done with them yet. That night, Nathan heard Alara crying in her crib. He rushed to her side, only to find her staring at the corner of the room, smiling, the way James used to. Nathan didn't sleep that night. He sat in the armchair by the crib, staring into the dark, Alara's tiny breaths the only thing tethering him to reality. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind outside made his pulse race. He couldn't stop thinking about the shrine in the basement. The photos, the handwriting, the way Alara had smiled, not like a baby, but like she knew something. He hadn't told the police about the shrine. Why would he? They already thought he was cracking. He couldn't blame them. If someone had told him this story a month ago, he'd have called it delusional too. But now he knew better. James had returned. Or something wearing James had. And it wanted Alara. The next day, Nathan retrieved the baby monitor from the trash. He had thrown it away in a panic, but now he needed it. Needed to know what was being said in the night. What he was missing while he slept, if he ever managed to sleep again. He set it back up on the dresser near the crib. Then, on a hunch, he went to the store and bought a second monitor, a video one this time, with night vision and audio recording. He installed it himself, wired it into a portable hard drive, and placed the camera where it could see Alara's crib and the room around her. That night, he hit record and waited. He sat awake until 3 a.m., the monitor screen glowing faintly on the bedside table. Alara stirred but didn't cry. Occasionally, she blinked up at the ceiling, sometimes smiling, sometimes frowning, as if someone were hovering just out of sight. But Nathan saw nothing. Eventually, exhaustion pulled him under. When he woke the next morning, the room was ice cold. The windows fogged. Alara was asleep. Safe, it seemed, but the monitor was off. The LED screen dead. The hard drive blinking red. He plugged it into his laptop and began scrolling through the footage. Nothing. Nothing. A few hours of stillness. He sped it up. Then, at 2:16 a.m., movement. A shape entered the room. Not through the door. Not through the window. It manifested in the far corner, the shadows bending, growing until they formed something human-shaped. At first it was fuzzy, indistinct, a suggestion of a man. Then, slowly, the image sharpened. It was James, but not the way Nathan remembered him. His body seemed hollow, like a shadow cast by something no longer living. His eyes glowed faintly in the black and white night vision, and his mouth moved slowly, whispering something just beyond the monitor's range of audio pickup. James leaned over the crib, stared at Alara, then, slowly, reached out his hand, hovering inches from her face. Alara's eyes opened. She didn't scream. She smiled. The same crooked smile. James whispered something, and Nathan saw her tiny lips move, mimicking the words, repeating them. Then, the figure turned and looked directly at the camera. The screen glitched. Static tore through the image. Lines. Distortion. Then, nothing. The figure vanished. Nathan sat frozen, the laptop humming quietly on his lap. His palms were sweaty. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He played the footage again, paused it on the moment James looked at the camera. He zoomed in. And there, just barely visible in the reflected light of the monitor, were Claire's eyes. Not Alara's. Not James's. Claire's. Staring out of the baby's face. Nathan slammed the laptop shut and stood up, pacing. This couldn't be happening. There had to be an explanation. Except, there wasn't. There never had been. Not since the night of the accident. Claire had died. But somehow, a part of her, or something else pretending to be her, had stayed behind. And now James, dead or not, had come back for what he believed was his. Alara. Nathan stared at the baby sleeping peacefully in her crib. Who are you? He wanted to ask. Instead, he whispered, what did she bring back? He opened Claire's journal again. The one Jennifer had mentioned. Most of it was mundane, grocery lists, nursery paint colors, questions about diapers and midwives. But near the end, The entries turned strange. Scattered. Nathan handed Alara over with shaking hands and watched as she was buckled into a car seat and driven away. He didn't feel relief. He felt like something in the house watched her leave. He spent the night alone for the first time since Claire's death. And that was the night the house spoke. It started with a soft whisper under the door, like someone was breathing on the other side. Then the photographs fell. Every frame, every image of Claire crashed to the ground at the same time. 1:37 a.m., glass shattering like screams in the dark. The thermostat blinked, and then reset to 66. The fridge door opened by itself. The TV turned on. Nathan stood in the middle of the living room, shaking, watching as the static on the screen shifted. No signal, no input, and then slowly became an image. A hospital room. Claire's face. Bloodied. Barely conscious. She was reaching out, calling his name. Nathan. He collapsed to his knees. Claire. The screen flickered again. Then it showed him, asleep in bed. The same footage from his baby monitor. Then James, standing over him. Then black. Then a voice. Not James's. Not Claire's. Something deeper. Something older. She made a promise. A soul for a soul. The baby was never meant to be born. The contract is broken. The house trembled. The walls groaned. A photo on the floor burst into flames. And somewhere, impossibly, Nathan heard a baby's cry, coming from upstairs. But Alara was gone. Gone with Jennifer. He raced up the stairs 2 at a time, breath hitching in his throat. The crib was empty, of course. But something was there. A single, charred scrap of paper. From Claire's journal. It read, "If I die, keep the baby away from James. He's not what he used to be. He's what I made him." Nathan didn't know how long he stood there, staring at the burnt scrap of paper lying in the crib like an accusation. His heart pounded so hard it made his vision pulse. The words on the page kept echoing in his head. He's not what he used to be. He's what I made him. What the hell had Claire done? Downstairs, the house was silent again. No more crying from the monitor. No more flickering televisions. But the silence was no longer just absence. It felt like something waiting. Nathan grabbed his keys and phone. He needed to get to Jennifer. Needed to make sure Alara was still okay. That she wasn't waking up in her aunt's arms with someone else's voice in her throat. That James, or whatever James had become, hadn't already gotten to her. He locked the front door behind him and rushed to his car, the engine coughing once before starting. The roads were slick with the first drizzle of a coming storm, the streetlights hazy in the early dark. But halfway to Jennifer's house, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost let it ring, but something in his gut told him to answer. He tapped the green icon and raised it to his ear. Hello. Static. Then a low, rhythmic crackling, like wind across dry leaves. Then a voice, distant and wet and broken. You left the door open. Nathan slammed the brakes. The car skidded, tires screeching, the world lurching sideways as he barely avoided clipping a mailbox. His hands shook as he looked at the phone. Call ended. He turned the car around. He didn't want to go back, but he had to. When he reached the house, the front door was wide open. Inside, the lights were off. Every bulb shattered. The hallway smelled of earth, wet soil, and rotting leaves. And something else, too. Something coppery and warm. Nathan stepped carefully through the doorway, one hand gripping the pocket knife he kept in the car's console. James, he called. What do you want? No answer. Then, from upstairs, came the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Not Jennifer's. Not Claire's. Not even James's. Something else. Nathan crept to the stairs, each step creaking underfoot as he made his way up in the dark. The air changed with every stair. Heavier, denser, like the oxygen was thickening. He reached the top floor. Silence. Then, a creak behind him. He turned fast, knife raised. Nothing. But the footprints were visible now. Wet. Muddy. Leading from the attic door at the end of the hall, straight to Alara's empty crib. And then into his bedroom. He followed them, teeth clenched, trying not to breathe. The door to his bedroom was half closed. He pushed it open with his foot. Inside, no one. But the footprints stopped at the foot of his bed, and carved into the bedsheet, slashed with something sharp, were 5 words. You were never her father. Nathan stumbled back, while rising in his throat. This was getting worse. The line between the living and the dead, the real and the imagined, was gone. Blurred. He turned to run. But behind him, footsteps again. From the attic. This time not slow. Fast. Hurried. Charging. He bolted down the stairs, nearly tripping, his lungs burning with panic. And behind him, pounding steps. Too heavy to be human. He didn't look back. He couldn't look back. He flung open the front door and slammed it shut behind him, locking the deadbolt and backing away from the house entirely. He stood in the street, rain falling now in icy needles, his shirt clinging to his skin. The windows of the house remained dark. Still. But then, from the upper window, movement. Someone stood in Alara's nursery, watching him, holding something. He squinted and realized it was him. James, holding the baby monitor in one hand and Alara's stuffed elephant in the other. Nathan pulled out his phone and dialed Jennifer. No answer. He tried again. Voicemail. Then a text pinged in. From Jennifer. Alara just started laughing in her sleep. I swear she said your name. Followed by another. Is it possible? Babies can speak this early? Nathan stared at the screen, his hand numb. Then the phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A photo. Alara. Asleep in her carrier. But the reflection in the window behind her? It wasn't Jennifer. It was Claire. Looking older. Sadder. Hollow-eyed. And just barely visible in the corner. James. Smiling. Nathan drove like a man possessed. The rain came down in sheets, slicing the road into blurred ribbons, but he barely blinked. His hands clutched the steering wheel so tight his knuckles whitened, and his foot trembled on the gas. He had to get to Jennifer. To Alara. He didn't care about the laws of physics or the warnings on the highway signs. He only cared about time and how little of it he might have left. Claire in the window. James in the reflection. Alara whispering names she shouldn't know. It was all unraveling, and he could feel it. The moment when the veil between what should be and what is would tear wide open. He reached Jennifer's quiet cul-de-sac in under 15 minutes, tires screeching as he pulled into her driveway. The lights were on in the living room. Warm, inviting, comforting. But Nathan had learned not to trust that. He ran to the front door and knocked, hard. Jennifer opened it moments later, blinking in surprise. Nathan? What the hell? Where's Alara? He gasped. Is she okay? Where is she? She's fine. She's asleep in the guest room. What's going on? Nathan didn't answer. He pushed past her and rushed down the hallway, throwing open the guest bedroom door. There she was. Alara. Peaceful. Curled in a nest of blankets, one fist resting by her mouth. She looked so small, so impossibly normal. He dropped to his knees beside the crib and let out a breath that shook his whole body. She's okay, he said. Thank God. Jennifer leaned against the doorway, arms folded. You want to explain what this is about? Nathan didn't know where to begin. The house. The whispers. The baby monitor. James's reflection. Claire's journal. The video footage. The photo, that photo. He pulled out his phone and opened the message. But the photo was gone. Deleted. Replaced with a blank gray square and a red exclamation mark. Media not found. Nathan's mouth went dry. No. 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 It was here. He was in the photo. So was Claire. I swear. Jennifer crossed her arms. Nathan, you're scaring me. I'm not making this up, he snapped, louder than he meant to. There's something wrong with Alara. Something in her. James, he's not dead. Or he is, but he's back. And Claire. He stopped, breath catching in his throat. Claire brought him back, he whispered. Through Alara. Jennifer stared at him like she was seeing someone unravel in front of her. But then, something shifted. She stepped into the room, picked up a small box from the nightstand, and opened it. A photo album. Old. Bound in worn leather. Claire's handwriting across the front. Family, always. She gave this to me a week before the accident, Jennifer said. Said she wanted to keep something safe. I never opened it. I thought it was just baby pictures. Nathan stood slowly. Jennifer handed it to him. He opened the album. The first few pages were what he expected. Grainy ultrasound shots, baby shower invites, a Polaroid of Claire holding up a onesie that read hello, world, with a goofy grin on her face. But then, the pictures changed. There were photos of Claire at night, taken through windows. In the kitchen, in bed, in the garden. Her expression blank, distant, haunted. And then, a series of photos he didn't recognize at all. Claire in a candlelit room, holding something wrapped in red cloth. A sigil drawn on the floor beneath her. A photograph of James's face, burning in a ceramic bowl. And then a close-up, Claire's eyes red-rimmed, mouth open, mid-chant. Nathan flipped the page. There were journal entries tucked between the plastic sleeves now, relief that it was over. But Claire, she asked questions. She was always curious. Too curious. I think she found something. I think she wanted him back. If she brought him back, Nathan, he's not your brother anymore. He's what's left of him, twisted by grief and the door she opened. He will want the baby. Not for love. For entry. Don't let him in. He can only cross where love was given freely. That's how Claire summoned him. That's how he'll reach the child. Through your love. You have to let go of the past. Of her. Or he'll use you too. The letter slipped from Nathan's hands. Jennifer was watching him from the other side of the room. What is it? He's not just haunting us, Nathan whispered. He's coming through us. Through Claire. Through me. Through the love we had for him. He looked at Alara. Sleeping. Peaceful. But for how long? They couldn't run anymore. It wasn't about distance. It was about barriers. Emotional. Spiritual. Love was a doorway. And Claire had opened it wide. I need to go back to the house, Nathan said suddenly. Jennifer stared. Are you out of your mind? There's something else. Something Claire left behind. Something she didn't want anyone to find. But I need to. Before he does. You're not going alone. No, he said. You're staying here. With Alara. Jennifer hesitated. Then nodded. Be careful. As Nathan stood to leave, Alara stirred in her sleep and made a soft, wet sound. Nathan froze. She smiled again. But this time, she wasn't smiling at him. She was smiling at the wall. And just before he left the room, she whispered, so softly it could have been the wind, Daddy. And it wasn't Claire's voice. And it wasn't Alara's. It was James's. Nathan arrived back at the house just before 3 a.m. The street was dead silent. Even the crickets had gone quiet, as if nature itself knew to avoid this place now. The house looked the same as he had left it, but somehow wrong. The windows were dark. The roof sagged a little heavier. The trees seemed to lean in toward it, like the night itself was closing in around its bones. He stepped out of the car, keeping the letter from the Bible folded tightly in his coat pocket like a talisman. His mother's words repeated in his mind like a warning bell. He can only cross where love was given freely. He approached the front steps. The porch light was out. The air smelled damp, almost fetid. He slipped the key into the lock. It stuck for a moment, reluctant, as though the house knew who he was and didn't want him to return. But it opened. Nathan stepped inside. And the door slammed shut behind him. The house greeted him with a low groan. The kind that wasn't wood shifting or pipe settling, but something older. Something breathing. He turned on his flashlight and swept it across the entryway. The furniture hadn't moved, but the air felt dense. Like it was filled with invisible water. Every step felt like dragging his body through syrup. He made his way toward the basement door. The hallway was colder here, shadows hanging heavier along the walls. As he passed the nursery, he caught a faint glimpse of the mobile above the crib spinning slowly, even though the window was shut and the air still. He didn't stop. Not this time. He reached the basement door. It was open. Of course it was. Nathan hesitated at the top step, then turned on the light. Nothing. He descended slowly, step by step, until the air turned frigid. The flashlight caught cobwebs, old paint cans, rusted tools. And then, there it was. The shrine. Reassembled. Photos pinned neatly on the far wall in the shape of a circle. Claire at the center. Surrounding her, images of Nathan, of the baby, of James. The entire family, carefully arranged, as if recreating a constellation only one person understood. The blanket was there, too. Folded. With Claire's favorite sweater laid across it like an offering. And in the center of the floor, a sigil. Identical to the one from the photo album. Drawn in what Nathan prayed was paint, though the scent told him otherwise. At its center, a candle still flickered, burning a strange bluish flame that cast no real light, only deeper shadow. Nathan stepped into the circle. Nothing happened. At first. Then, the candle's flame flared, and the temperature dropped. His breath fogged the air in front of him, and the walls began to vibrate, not visibly, but through sound, through pressure, like something just beneath the foundation was pushing upward. Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out the letter again. He read it aloud, every word shaking out of his chest like gravel. James was different. Even as a child. We tried to protect you. When he died, I felt relief. And then, a voice. Not his own. Not aloud. Inside his head. But you didn't protect him. You forgot him. He turned sharply. The shadows near the far wall twisted, stretched. James stepped out of them. Not a ghost. Not entirely human either. a hybrid of memory and matter, stitched together with rage and grief. His face was half familiar, half rotted. His voice was layered, James's voice on top, and beneath it, something deeper, something ancient. "You left me behind," he said, stepping into the circle. She remembered. "She called me back. But you forgot." Nathan's voice cracked. "You're not him." James tilted his head. "But she is." He raised one hand, and suddenly, the basement shook. The walls pulsed. The photos on the wall fluttered like leaves in wind. The candle flickered violently. And from inside the house came a sound, not crying. Laughter. A baby's laughter. High and soft. Then, a woman's voice. "Claire." Calling softly. "Nathan, come upstairs. She's awake." Nathan staggered back. No. James stepped closer. "You don't get to keep her," he hissed. "You were the spare. You were always the spare. The quiet one. The lesser one. She chose me." The floor beneath Nathan's feet cracked slightly, and the sigil glowed faint blue. And Nathan suddenly understood. This wasn't a summoning circle. It was a gateway. It didn't bring James into the world. It let him out. And Alara. Alara wasn't just a vessel. She was the price. The bridge between what Claire had loved and what she had feared. Between James's memory and whatever had been waiting on the other side of her grief. Nathan looked at the shrine, the photos, the candle, the sigil. Then he did something desperate. He pulled a lighter from his coat pocket and set the first photograph aflame. It curled, blackened. James screamed. Not just in rage, but in fear. Nathan lit the next photo. The sigil sparked. James lunged. Nathan kicked over the candle, letting the blue flame spread across the circle. The wall of photos caught quickly, fire climbing upward, feeding off memory. James staggered. Flickered. "You can't stop me," he snarled. "She's still mine." Nathan turned to him, eyes wild. "She's no one's but her own." And with that, he struck the final match. Threw it into the center of the sigil. Flames erupted. James vanished. The shrine burned. And somewhere, distantly, faintly, Nathan heard a baby cry again. But this time, it was real. Pure. A sound of release, not possession. A sound of life. He ran from the basement as smoke poured up the stairs, coughing, stumbling, but never stopping. Outside, the rain swallowed the flames. The fire didn't spread. It just burned the sigil. Nothing else. And the moment it was gone, so was the weight. So was the presence. Nathan dropped to his knees in the grass, soaked and shaking. And then his phone buzzed. A message from Jennifer. "Alara just woke up." She said, "Daddy." But it sounded like her. The next morning brought the first clear sky Nathan had seen in weeks. Birds chirped. The air smelled clean. There were no whispers in the walls, no shadow figures staring through windows. The house stood still and quiet, the way houses are supposed to, not like something alive, not like something waiting. Nathan didn't go back inside. He walked to the car, every inch of his body aching, soot still clinging to his skin and clothes, and drove straight back to the motel. When he opened the door, Alara was lying on the bed, blinking up at the ceiling, gurgling softly. Jennifer sat nearby, dark circles under her eyes, bottle in hand. "She's been fine," she said. Calm. Happy, even. Like she's new. Nathan sat beside her. "She is new." He didn't tell Jennifer everything about the night before. Just that something had been destroyed, a tether, a ritual, a lie that Claire had left behind. But there was still something off. Alara looked like herself again. No crooked smile. No dark stare. Just a baby. Pure, innocent, untouched. Yet Nathan couldn't shake the thought that something remained. A ripple. A scar in the fabric. Like a tear in a painting that had been stitched up but still left the outline behind. That's when Jennifer said it. "You should talk to the midwife." Nathan turned. "What?" "Claire's midwife. You remember her, right? Tall, pale, a little odd. I never liked her." Nathan blinked. The memory felt fuzzy, a woman with gray eyes and cold hands. Always in white. Never smiled. "She came to the baby shower," Jennifer said. Claire insisted. "I asked if she was a family friend, and Claire just said, 'No, she found me.'" A chill crept up Nathan's spine. He grabbed his laptop and pulled up Claire's appointment logs. There it was, Maeve Harridan, certified midwife and spiritual wellness counselor. There was a phone number. No address. He called. Voicemail. He tried again. Then a third time. Finally, on the fourth ring, someone answered. "Maeve speaking," a soft voice said. Velvet and steady. The kind of voice you trusted even when you shouldn't. "This is Nathan Hale," he said. My wife, Claire, was your client. She died after the accident. But Claire had. He didn't cry. Instead, he looked into the rearview mirror. Alara had just opened her eyes. And for a second, just one fleeting instant, they looked like James's. Not in color or shape, but in that same, impossible knowing. Like she recognized him. Like she remembered. Back at the motel, Jennifer noticed the change in him immediately. You got the results, didn't you? Nathan sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, hands trembling slightly. She's not mine. Jennifer was quiet for a long time. Then she said, You know what Claire told me once? Right after she found out she was pregnant? She said she didn't know where the baby came from. Not in the normal way. She said, It was like she chose me. Like she was always supposed to be mine. Nathan looked up, and I thought it was just poetic. Hormonal. But now, Nathan whispered, Now it makes sense. Jennifer nodded. Maybe she wasn't just born. Maybe she was called. And not by you. He stood up suddenly, heart racing. James. Jennifer's face paled. But he's gone. Not gone, Nathan said. Just quiet. Waiting. That's what Maeve meant. That's why he kept saying, She remembers. Because he's not trying to possess her. He turned toward Alara. He's trying to become her. Later that night, Nathan sat in the motel bathroom, knees pulled to his chest, staring at the DNA report printed from the lab. No paternal match. The paper crinkled in his shaking hands. The child in the next room, laughing, gurgling, full of light, wasn't his. But he had raised her, held her through the storm, fought demons for her, and maybe that made her his anyway. Then, as he started to fold the paper back into his coat pocket, he noticed something strange. In the mother's profile, listed automatically from the submitted data, maternal match, undetermined. His heart stopped. He hadn't submitted a sample from Claire. And yet, how could the system not detect her DNA in Alara's? He double-checked. No match. None. He ran into the other room and stared at Alara in the crib. She looked up at him, eyes wide. Innocent. Maybe. Or maybe not. The realization sank in like poison. Alara wasn't Claire's child either. Nathan couldn't breathe. He sat on the edge of the motel bed, the lab report limp in his hand, his mind unraveling word by word. No paternal match. No maternal match. Not his. Not Claire's. Not anyone's. Alara gurgled softly in the crib beside him. One tiny hand reached for the mobile that wasn't there, grasping at invisible shapes. She looked like a baby. She sounded like a baby. But what was she? He thought back. To the fire. To the basement. To Maeve's cryptic warnings. Some spirits don't need names to be born. Just obsession. Claire's love. James's hatred. Nathan's grief. They hadn't created life. They'd opened a door. And something had walked through it. Something clever. Something patient. He looked down at Alara and whispered, Who are you? She turned her head, slowly. Smiled. Then she spoke. Not in a baby's voice. Not in words that made sense. But something close. Like syllables from a language older than memory. Nathan recoiled, every muscle in his body screaming to run, to not be in this room. But he stayed. Because whatever Alara was, she was still his. At least for now. He had one place left to go. One last room in the house that he'd avoided since Claire died. The nursery. That night, Nathan returned to the house again. He didn't tell Jennifer. He didn't bring Alara. He left her sleeping at the motel, tucked under warm blankets. Her face turned to the wall. He wasn't sure if he'd come back. The house was dead quiet when he stepped in. The smell of fire still lingered in the air. The walls felt thinner now, like the skin of something wounded. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. At the top, he paused. The door to the nursery was open. A low breeze drifted out of it, though every window in the house was shut. Nathan stepped inside. And there, in the center of the room, stood James. Or something like him. He was taller now. Thinner. His features stretched like wax left too close to a flame. His eyes burned, not with rage, but with a terrible, patient certainty. She's not yours, James said softly. Nathan didn't move. You mean Alara? James smiled. No. The form is hers. But the soul? The soul belongs to me now. You fed it with your love. You raised it. You held it through the veil. You carried me across. Nathan's throat clenched. You're not real. I'm more real than you ever were, James said. You were always second. Always the one left behind. Nathan's voice rose. Then why come back through me? Why use me? Why need me? James's smile faltered, just for a moment. You were the only one who loved her purely. Claire. She opened the door. But you? You were the key. He stepped closer, shadows curling around his feet like smoke. She gave her body. I needed a soul. He tapped his chest. Now I have one. Nathan didn't step back. You're still not her father. You never were. I am now, James whispered. You burned the shrine, but it didn't end it. It just passed it. Into her. Into the girl. I live through her now. Nathan's heart pounded. Then I'll end it here. He pulled the object from his coat pocket, the letter from his mother, and unfolded it slowly. The edges were charred, but the sigil at the bottom, the one she had drawn in her last entry, was intact. He dropped it on the floor of the nursery, then struck a match. The fire curled instantly, bright and white-hot. James hissed, recoiling, but didn't vanish. Not this time. She's already mine, he growled. Nathan pulled a second match, and a lock of hair. Claire's. The one he had clipped from her brush in the days after the funeral and kept without knowing why. He tossed it into the flames. The room screamed. Not James, the walls, the air, the house itself. The floorboards buckled. The light exploded. The crib overturned and split in two. James staggered, eyes wide. No, he said. You don't understand what you're doing. I don't have to understand, Nathan whispered. I just have to end it. He stepped into the fire. The heat didn't burn. It passed through him, not around him. And James, whatever he was now, began to melt. The shadows fled his body. His smile twisted, and his voice cracked into hundreds of voices, screaming, sobbing, begging. Then he collapsed into ash. The flames blinked out, and the nursery was still. The mobile above the crib spun once, then stopped. Nathan looked down at the circle of soot where James had stood, and whispered, You don't get to have her. Back at the motel, Nathan returned just before dawn. Alara stirred as he picked her up, her small fingers curling around his thumb. She looked up at him, eyes wide. Just eyes now. No knowing. No echoes. Just light. Nathan kissed her forehead, tears welling in his throat. Whatever she was, whatever she had been, now she was his. Finally, the sun rose that morning without a trace of storm clouds. For the first time in weeks, Nathan felt something like stillness. Not peace. Not yet, but the silence that follows a scream. The kind that makes you wonder if the horror was ever real, or if it lived only in the shadows of your own mind. Alara slept soundly beside him. No cryptic smiles. No midnight whispering. Just soft breaths and the occasional twitch of her foot, like she was dreaming something simple. Something normal. He didn't dream at all. Nathan called Jennifer as soon as the motel lobby opened. It's over, he told her. She didn't ask how. Maybe she didn't want to know. 2 days later, Jennifer brought over a box of Claire's belongings from her old apartment, things she had packed and set aside for Alara someday. A few clothes, a silver locket, a small notebook filled with baby name ideas, and at the bottom of the box, a folded white baptism gown. Claire had ordered it 3 months before the accident. Simple, delicate, embroidered with a small cross on the collar and tiny pearls stitched into the sleeves. Nathan stared at it a long time. He didn't believe in baptisms, not in the religious sense, but the idea of a ceremony, something that could wash away what had come before, suddenly felt important. Necessary. He picked up the gown and carried it into the bathroom, ran the tub, lukewarm, and bathed Alara gently, carefully, almost reverently. When she was clean and warm, he dressed her in the gown. The moment he fastened the last button at her neck, a cold wind swept through the motel room. Nathan turned. The bathroom door creaked open by itself. He stepped into the hallway, holding Alara tight against his chest. The light above flickered once, then steadied. On the floor in front of the door, a small red mark. Nathan knelt down slowly. It wasn't paint. It was blood. Fresh. One drop. Then another. A trail leading to the crib. No, Nathan whispered. No, no, no. He opened the crib. Empty. Alara was still in his arms. But inside the crib, something, had written across the sheet in what looked like smeared blood. 4 words. We are not done. The temperature in the room dropped again. Alara whimpered. The shadows along the ceiling bent unnaturally. Nathan turned, clutching her tighter, heart thudding like a war drum. In the mirror across the room, above the dresser, his reflection stood. But it wasn't just him. Behind his shoulder, a figure loomed. Thin, burned, smiling. James. No longer trying to cross over. Not possessing. Not haunting. just watching. Nathan didn't move, didn't breathe. Then Alara stirred, and in the